My life as a shoemaker started when I was 11 years old. I had polio as a child, and I was also in care as my family had broken up. And the powers that be at the time decided that I was going to go to a special school in Hampshire, the Lord Mayor Law College, where, as well as doing schoolwork, I was going to be learning a trade. On that first morning, Peter Shaw, who was my housemaster, he went round all the other children in the room and said, "What would you like to do?" And they had a choice of radio and television, tailoring, commercial subjects, or shoemaking. And I couldn't wait for my turn to come round, because I really fancied plugging bits of electrical stuff in and blowing them up. But when he got round to my turn, he just looked at me and he said, "Taylor, you're with me." So the first part of the process is to measure the foot. We're going to just draw around the outside of the foot. And I'm going to keep the pen up because we use the thickness of the pen as a guide to how much allowance to make on the last. Initially I'm going to measure the widest part of the feet. So we've got 3 positions of the instep. My first job on the first morning was to unpack tins of shoe polish in the storeroom, and I did that quite eagerly, unpacked, stacked neatly on the shelves, and on top of the packet of tins of polish was a metal shoehorn. It was actually this shoehorn, and I asked Peter Shaw, "What shall I do with this?" And he said, "You keep that, that's your first tool." What I want to try and do now is to get a side view of the foot. I can lift the foot a couple of inches in the air to about there. I can hold it with my other hand, hold it still, and we can now just draw, again keeping the pen 90 degrees to the board. And here we have a really accurate picture, and this is really important because it shows me the shape of the back of the heel here, and the last needs to match that, but also the shape of the instep. Now between that measurement and the foot measurement, we've now built up a 3D picture of the foot. By the time I'd left the college at 17 years old, I had City and Guilds examinations, credits and distinctions. So in those 5 years, they'd really made me ready to go out into the world. My first job was in North London at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital at Stanmore. And I was only 18 years old when I was seconded to the London Institute of Orthopaedics for a year, developing and researching new materials and new methods of making shoes. That gave me a really good insight into what could be possible, rather than just the learning process up till then. What I want to do now is to take a mould of the bottom of the foot, and we do this using a standard industry impression box. What this now gives me is an exact impression of the plantar surface of the foot, but because they've walked through the box, we really get an accurate picture of the weight-bearing areas of the foot. The first 20 years of my shoemaking life was spent working for companies, learning new ways of doing the same job. I moved north when I was about 22 years old, worked for 2 or 3 companies around the north of England, and that really takes me up to the age of nearly 40, when I began to feel that I had more to offer. Right, we're ready now to start to make a last for this foot. We've found a last that's fairly close from our stock of pre-used lasts. And what we're going to do now is we're going to build this last up to match the shape of the foot. And quite clearly we can see there's little areas here where, even allowing for the width of the pen, that we need to build up. My first customers were the hardest to find, actually, and initially I used 2 magazines that catered for disabled people. I think you saw me an advert in a magazine.
Yeah, and I showed it to my wife, and she said, "Why don't you try it?" And I said, "Oh, it won't be any better than anybody else." And then she said, "Oh, give it a go. Phone up and see what happens." and Philip arrived on our doorstep, and he said, well, I can do some shoes for you, don't worry about it. I was going on holiday to Australia and New Zealand, and I wanted some waterproof shoes or boots so that I could do whitewater rafting. And he said, no problem. He said, I can make you some out of this new material. It's waterproof. The reason that I need specialised footwear is because I have CMT, Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, which has made a very severe deformity of both feet. After a few weeks, I'd had a fitting, and then he came again with the finished boots, and they were fantastic, and it's changed my life completely. My feet have deteriorated over the last 20 years, and they've changed quite a lot, and Philip has managed to keep me able to walk. I wouldn't be able to walk if it wasn't for Philip. Over the years, the National Health Service has tried to make comfortable shoes for me through about 6 different companies, and this has never been achieved. And I think the reason is that the orthotist that I've seen from the National Health Service that takes measurements can't pass on the instructions to the shoemaker that actually makes the shoes. The shoemaker doesn't actually see the patient. I have had problems with footwear for all my life until I found Philip Taylor, who has been making my shoes for the last 20 years. I can't remember the name of the surgical appliance officer lady that had to see every week or every fortnight, going back with my shoes to be altered. And she was like, well, I used to call her the dragon. She was really very school teacher sort of person, and said to me that we've done everything we can for you. Nobody else has come back with problems. It's only you that comes with these problems. Finally, she said, you're not going home in your old boots. You're going to go out in these. And she put my old ones in a bag, made me walk out in the new shoes, and I sat in the corridor for about 15 minutes crying with pain until I could get my other shoes on, and I never went back there again.
On the first day when a customer comes into the workshop, I spend probably a quarter of an hour just talking to them about their lifestyle and trying to understand why they want to have shoes made. And it's only after that time where we will take actual measurements.
You've understood the problems that I have, not only making the shoes, but being able to observe me walking and make shoes that are comfortable for walking in. I'm convinced that because of the deterioration over the last 20 years as well, my deformities got worse. I think I know that I would be dependent on a wheelchair.
I make around about 120 pairs a year. Probably a third of those are new customers, and they will hopefully become regular customers. Behind me we've got 700 pairs of lasts on the rack. Most of these people have been now coming for 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years.
For 25 or 30 years I've not been able to stand up without any shoes or boots on because I don't have any strength in. My feet have completely turned in, and I'm walking on the ankles. And Philip's allowed me to be able to walk, and it has changed my life completely over the last 20 years.
One of the reasons why people come to have shoes made here is they have a disability, and they would have more likely have gone through the National Health Service to have shoes made in the first place. That's where there are a lot of issues about the quality and the fit of shoes provided through the service. The NHS over the last 20 or 30 years has shifted many patients into semi-bespoke, or they call it modular footwear. That's great for a lot of people. The problem becomes when we start putting the wrong people into that sort of shoe. The Hutton Report 2009 indicated that something like 40% of all orthotics and footwear made through the NHS is accredited as waste. It's not worn for one reason or another. And there's a figure as much as £30 million a year being put to that. An example of that is we made a pair of shoes last year, and I charged the NHS £800 for a pair that they could have got for £600. The customer walked out wearing those shoes. The previous pair, supplied by the hospital at £600, had to be remade 3 times and took 10 clinical appointments. So the actual cost of that pair of shoes was £3,000. Now, somewhere along the line, that has to change. There's a lot of interest within both the footwear industry and within the NHS now, progressively, to try and make change to make this a better service for people who need footwear. You came to me, and for the first time you saw a shoemaker who understood. I mean, if that was rolled out nationally or whatever, that people in your position with really complex needs, I mean, what difference do you think that would make to people in your situation?
I think, first of all, the people with complex needs would be able to have more comfortable footwear, and also it would save the National Health Service many hundreds of thousands of pounds in wasted time in trying to get comfortable footwear for these patients.
People ask me why I am so passionate about this. And I have to go back to the very beginning of the story, to that first morning when I was 11 years old, and Peter Shaw gave me this shoehorn. I ran a conference for shoemakers about 5 years ago. We introduced the whole of the conference to how we all started off making shoes. I told Peter Shaw the story, he remembered it, and he stood up, and in front of all of my colleagues and our friends, he told me that when I was 11 years old, and I was a horrible child, I was going to be expelled, and Peter Shaw told the headmaster if he expelled me, he would resign. To this day, that is Peter Shaw, and that's why I want things to change for everybody.